morning sun cast long shadows across the Galactic Council building on Nexus Station. Inside the Great Hall, representatives from dozens of species argued about borders and trade routes. Their voices echoed off the crystal walls as they debated who owned what planet and who could travel where. Elena Vasquez sat quietly in the human section. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or medals. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she held a small tablet in her hands. While other ambassadors shouted and waved their arms, Elena just listened and took notes. The Zephyrians were angry about mining rights in the Outer Rim. Their ambassador, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, pointed at star maps floating above the table. "Those systems belong to us," he declared. "Our ancestors found them first." The Caltech representative disagreed. He was shorter but wider, with thick gray skin like armor. "Your ancestors may have found them, but we developed them. We built the cities and the mines. They are ours now." Other species took sides. The insect-like collective buzzed their agreement with the Zephyrians. The plant-based Sylvani rustled their leaves in support of the Caltech. Soon half the hall was shouting at the other half. Elena checked her watch and made another note on her tablet. She had seen this same argument dozens of times before. Different species, different planets, but always the same problem. Everyone wanted to own things. Nobody wanted to maintain them. "What do the humans think?" asked Ambassador Krihak of the Sylvani. He was one of the few who ever asked for human opinions. Elena stood up slowly. The hall grew quieter as she spoke. "We have reviewed both claims and submitted our recommendation through the standard process. The paperwork is already in your systems." Ambassador Thektel of the Caltech Empire laughed. "Paperwork? Always paperwork with humans. Do you ever have opinions about anything important?" Elena sat back down without responding. She had learned long ago that most species saw humans as boring. They were not warriors like the hegemony forces. They did not have advanced technology like the collective. They were not wise like the ancient Sylvani. Humans just worked. But Elena knew something the others did not understand. While they argued about who owned the Outer Rim systems, humans had spent the last 6 months quietly upgrading the communication networks that connected those systems to the rest of the galaxy. While the Zephyrians and Caltech planned for possible war, human technicians had updated the navigation systems their fleets would need to find their way through space. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. By the end, nothing was decided. The Zephyrians and Caltech were angrier than before. Several other species had joined the argument, each claiming their own rights to nearby systems. Elena packed her tablet and walked toward the exit. As she passed Krihak, the Sylvani ambassador touched her arm gently with one of his vine-like fingers. "Your people are patient," he said in his whispering voice. "Sometimes I think too patient." Elena smiled politely. "Patience is useful when you understand how things really work." She left the hall and walked through the station's corridors. Nexus Station was huge, with sections for every member species of the Galactic Council. The Hegemony section had high ceilings and martial decorations. The Collective section hummed with the sound of thousands of working insects. The Sylvani section was like walking through a forest. The Human section was different. It looked like an office building from old Earth. Clean white walls, simple furniture, and lots of computer screens. But these computers were connected to every system in the galaxy. From this quiet section, humans monitored communication networks, shipping routes, power grids, and life support systems across hundreds of worlds. Elena walked to her private office and activated a secure communication link. A dozen screens lit up, showing human facilities across the galaxy. Each screen showed the same thing: technicians performing routine maintenance on critical systems. "Status report," Elena said quietly. "Navigation network updates complete," reported Sarah Chen from the Outer Rim relay station. "All systems running optimal efficiency." "Communication array maintenance finished," said Marcus Thompson from the Core Worlds hub. "Backup systems tested and verified. Shipping route algorithms updated," reported Dr. Kim from the Trade Center on Prosperity Station. "New efficiency improvements should reduce travel time by 8%. Elena nodded and made notes. To everyone else, this looked like boring maintenance work, but Elena knew better. These updates and improvements were actually something else entirely. They were preparations. The final report came from Captain Rogers on the research station near Earth. "All data packages ready for transfer. Personal belongings have been sorted. Essential personnel are standing by. Very good, Elena said. Continue standard operations until further notice. She closed the communication link and sat back in her chair. Outside her window, she could see alien ships arriving and departing from the station. Traders, diplomats, tourists, and military vessels from dozens of species. All of them depended on systems that humans had built, maintained, and improved over the past 2 centuries. But none of them realized it. The Galactic Council thought humans were junior partners in galactic civilization. They gave humans the boring jobs, keeping communication networks running, maintaining shipping routes, fixing broken equipment. The exciting work of exploration, war, and politics was left to other species. Elena had tried for years to explain how important these boring jobs really were. She had offered to teach other species how to maintain their own systems. She had suggested that every species should understand the technology they depended on, but the other ambassadors always had more important things to worry about. Let the humans handle the details, they would say. We have bigger concerns. Elena's tablet chimed with an incoming message. It was from Earth's government, marked with the highest security level. She read it quickly and then deleted it. The message was simple. Final authorization granted. Operation Quiet Departure approved. She stood up and walked to her window again. In a few weeks, the Galactic Council would continue arguing about territory and power. The Zephyrians and Calthek would probably start shooting at each other. Other species would take sides and form alliances. It would be chaos, just like always, but this time the humans would not be there to keep the lights on. Elena began writing her resignation letter. It was short and polite, just like everything humans did. No threats about what would happen when they left. No promises about what other species should do. Just a simple announcement that humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council. She thought about all the species who had called humans weak or boring. They would learn soon enough what humans really were. Not warriors or explorers or politicians. They were the people who made everything else possible. They were the ones who kept galactic civilization running smoothly, while others took credit for its success. But Elena felt no anger about this. Humans had always known their real value, even when others did not see it. They had prepared for this day carefully and quietly, just like they did everything else. Tomorrow, she would submit her resignation and begin the final phase of humanity's departure from known space. No drama, no grand speeches, no last-minute demands. They would simply leave, taking their knowledge and skills to find partners who might appreciate what they had to offer. Elena finished her letter and scheduled it for delivery. Then she began her own preparations to leave. Soon, the galaxy would discover what happened when the people who maintained everything simply stopped showing up for work. It would be an educational experience for everyone involved. Ambassador Krihak woke up at his usual time on Nexus Station. The artificial morning light slowly brightened in his quarters, copying the sunrise from his home world. He stretched his vine-like arms and prepared for another day of galactic politics. But something was wrong. Every morning for the past 5 years, his communication officer brought him a detailed briefing about overnight events across the galaxy. Sarah Chen, a quiet human woman, always arrived exactly at 800 hours with perfectly organized reports. She knew which information was important and which could wait. She never forgot anything. This morning, Sarah did not come. Krihak waited until 8:30, then called his aide. "Where is Communications Officer Chen?" His aide, a young Sylvani named Veltar, rustled his leaves nervously. "Sir, none of the human staff reported for duty this morning. We assumed they were having some kind of meeting." "All of them?" "Yes, sir. The communications team, the technical staff, the maintenance crews, none of them are here." Krihak felt a strange chill in his wooden core. He had worked with humans for decades and had never known them to miss work without notice. They were the most reliable people in the galaxy. If a human said they would be somewhere at a certain time, they were always there. He tried calling Sarah directly, but her communication device was not responding. He tried calling the human embassy section but got only an automated message saying the office was temporarily closed. Across the station, other ambassadors were discovering the same problem. The hegemony's morning briefing never arrived. The collective's data analysis reports were missing. The shipping schedules that kept trade flowing through the galaxy had not been updated. But it was not just Nexus Station. Reports began flooding in from across known space. Human-operated communication relays had gone silent during the night. Maintenance teams had not shown up for work on hundreds of worlds. The vast network of humans who kept galactic civilization running had simply vanished. Captain Vorthan of the Hegemony Defense Force was the first to try contacting Earth directly. His massive battleship approached the Sol system, but was stopped at the border by automated defense platforms. The platforms were clearly human-built, but no human voices answered his calls. Instead, a recorded message played, "Transit to this system is restricted until further notice. Alternative routes are available through the navigation network. Thank you for your cooperation." "This is Captain Vorthan of the Hegemony Defense Force," he announced. "I demand to speak with human authorities immediately." The platform simply repeated their message. When Vorthan tried to force his way past them, warning shots fired across his bow. The shots were precise and powerful, but clearly meant to discourage rather than destroy. The platforms were not trying to start a war. They just wanted to be left alone. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council began within hours. Every major species sent representatives, but the human chair remained empty. On Elena Vasquez's desk, someone had left a simple letter of resignation. "Humanity hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately," the letter read. "We thank you for the opportunity to serve and wish you well in your future endeavors." That was all. No explanation, no demands, no threats. Just a polite goodbye. Ambassador Thektal of the Kalthek Empire stood up angrily. "This is an insult to the entire galaxy. The humans cannot simply leave without explanation." "But they have left," pointed out Krihak quietly. "The question is, what do we do now?" The answer became clear over the following days. Without human maintenance, critical systems across the galaxy began to fail. The communication network that connected distant worlds started developing gaps. Ships became lost in space as navigation beacons went offline. Trade ground to a halt as shipping schedules became unreliable. On the Outer Rim, the conflict between the Zephyrians and Kalthek escalated quickly. Without human mediators to facilitate talks, both sides resorted to military action. But their fleets soon discovered a new problem. The star maps they depended on were no longer being updated. Navigation systems that had worked perfectly for decades suddenly could not find the shortest routes between systems. Admiral Zekron of the Zephyrian fleet found himself stranded in empty space, 3 days from his target. His navigation officer, a brilliant Zephyrian mathematician, stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, the quantum positioning arrays are giving inconsistent readings. The stellar cartography database appears to be incomplete." "What do you mean, incomplete?" "The detailed gravitational maps that allow precise navigation are missing. We have basic star positions, but not the microgravitational data needed for efficient FTL jumps." Admiral Zekron realized with growing horror that humans had maintained these databases. Somehow they had convinced everyone else that navigation was simple, when it actually required constant updates and calculations that no other species had bothered to learn. Similar discoveries were happening everywhere. On the trade world of Commerce Prime, merchants discovered that their automated inventory systems had stopped working. The elegant algorithms that predicted supply and demand across dozens of worlds had been maintained by a small team of human economists. Without their updates, the system crashed within days. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, farmers watched their crops begin to fail. The soil management programs that had doubled their yields were no longer receiving updates. It turned out that human agricultural specialists had been constantly adjusting these programs based on changing weather patterns and soil conditions. Dr. Yathara of the collective was one of the first to understand the full scope of the problem. As the galaxy's leading expert on social structures, she began analyzing humanity's role in galactic civilization. What she found terrified her. Humans had not simply been junior partners in galactic society. They had been the foundation that everything else was built on. While other species focused on politics, war, and exploration, humans had quietly made themselves responsible for everything that kept civilization functioning. They maintained the communication networks that allowed instant contact across light years. They operated the navigation systems that made interstellar travel possible. They managed the logistics that kept food, medicine, and raw materials flowing between worlds. They even maintained the life support systems on many space stations and colonies, and They had done it all so quietly and efficiently that everyone else had forgotten how important these jobs were. "We have a serious problem," Dr. Yathara announced to an emergency meeting of scientists from across the galaxy. Humanity was not just another member species. They were the support structure for our entire civilization. Without them, everything is falling apart. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The collective had millions of brilliant minds, but they specialized in biological sciences. The hegemony had powerful military technology, but no one who understood logistics. The Sylvani were wise and ancient, but they had always let others handle technical details. Only humans had possessed the combination of technical knowledge, organizational skills, and patient dedication needed to maintain a galaxy-spanning civilization. And now they were gone. "Can we bring them back?" asked someone from the audience. Dr. Yathara rustled her wings sadly. "That assumes we can find them. Long-range sensors show that every human colony ship has departed known space. They have not simply hidden, they have left entirely. Where did they go? Unknown. But given their obvious technological capabilities, I suspect they are beyond our ability to track or follow." The meeting ended without solutions. Across the galaxy, the slow collapse of civilization continued. Systems that had worked perfectly for generations began to fail. Wars erupted as communication broke down. Trade routes became unreliable as navigation systems degraded. And in the empty human sections of stations and colonies across known space, automated systems continued running for a few more weeks before they too began to shut down. One by one, leaving only darkness where once there had been the quiet competence that held everything together. 3 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy was falling apart. Ambassador Krihak stood in his office on Nexus Station, staring at a blank wall screen that should have shown galactic news. Instead, a simple message blinked: "Service temporarily unavailable." The same message had been showing for 6 weeks. He tried switching to different news channels, but they were all dead. The interstellar communication network that had once carried information instantly across thousands of light years was now full of holes. Entire sectors had gone silent, cut off from the rest of galactic civilization. Krihak's aide, Veltar, entered the office carrying a stack of paper reports. Real paper, printed from the station's emergency supplies. It was the only way to share information now that the digital networks were failing. "Sir, we have received a message pod from the Outer Rim," Veltar said, his leaves rustling with anxiety. "The situation there is getting worse." The message pod was an old-fashioned method of communication, a small spacecraft that carried physical data storage devices between star systems. It took weeks to travel distances that electronic messages had once crossed in seconds. Krihak read the report and felt his wooden core grow cold. The war between the Zephyrians and Calthek had spread to 5 neighboring systems. Both fleets were lost in space, unable to navigate effectively without the detailed star maps that humans had maintained. They were firing blindly at anything that moved, having given up on military strategy in favor of desperate aggression. But the military chaos was just the beginning. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were now completely unreliable. Ships that tried to make scheduled deliveries arrived days or weeks late, if they arrived at all. Some never arrived, lost forever in the vast emptiness between stars. The agricultural world of New Harvest was experiencing total crop failure. Without human-maintained soil management systems, the carefully balanced ecosystem that fed millions of people was collapsing. The planet had sent desperate requests for help, but no one knew how to fix the problems that humans had prevented so easily. Even worse, the space stations and colonies that depended on artificial life support were starting to experience system failures. The environmental controls that kept air breathable and water clean were breaking down. These systems had always seemed simple and reliable, but now engineers from across the galaxy were discovering how complex they really were. Dr. Yathara of the Collective had been working day and night to understand the crisis. Her latest report made for frightening reading. According to her analysis, humans had been responsible for maintaining over 60% of the critical infrastructure that kept galactic civilization functioning, but they had done it so quietly and efficiently that no one else had realized how dependent they were on human expertise. The humans offered to teach us their methods many times, Dr. Yathara had written, We have found records of training programs, educational exchanges, and technology transfers that were proposed by human organizations. In every case, other species declined these offers, preferring to let humans handle what they considered mundane technical work. Krihak remembered those offers. Elena Vasquez had personally invited Silvani engineers to study human maintenance techniques. The Silvani Council had politely declined, saying they were too busy with more important research into biological sciences. Now that research was meaningless. What good was advanced biology when you could not keep the lights on? The communication array in Krihak's office chimed with an incoming signal. He answered it hopefully, but the image was fuzzy and broken. Captain Thekmore of the Hegemony appeared on screen, his signal cutting in and out. Ambassador, can you... Me? Thekmore's voice was distorted by static. I can barely hear you, Captain. Where are you? Trying to... Human space investigation. The signal died completely. Krihak tried to reconnect, but the communication array showed error messages he did not understand. Another piece of human-maintained equipment had just failed. He called for his technical staff, but they could only shrug helplessly. The Silvani were experts at biological systems, but the quantum communication arrays that connected distant worlds were beyond their knowledge. They had always assumed that such technology was simple because humans made it look easy. Reports continued to arrive by message pod from across the galaxy. The collective's homeworlds were experiencing a crisis as their vast interconnected computer networks began to crash. The systems had been subtly managed by human specialists who understood how to prevent the cascade failures that were now bringing down entire planetary networks. The Hegemony's military forces were in chaos. Their ships could still fight, but they could not coordinate their actions across multiple star systems. The communication delays and navigation failures were making organized military operations impossible. Several Hegemony fleets had accidentally fired on each other, mistaking friendly ships for enemies in the confusion. Even the ancient Silvani, who had survived for millions of years, were struggling. Their homeworlds depended on environmental control systems that had been upgraded and maintained by human engineers. Without those upgrades, the delicate balance that kept their worlds habitable was starting to shift. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery came from the trade centers. Economic specialists trying to restart the galactic economy found that humans had been responsible for much more than simple logistics. They had developed and maintained the complex algorithms that predicted supply and demand across hundreds of worlds. They had managed the currency exchange systems that allowed different species to trade with each other. They had even operated the insurance networks that made interstellar commerce financially viable. Without these systems, trade had collapsed to the most basic level. Individual ships carrying goods between nearby systems with no coordination or efficiency. The economic network that had supported billions of people was simply gone. Krihak received another report that made him understand the true scope of the disaster. The humans had not just maintained existing systems, they had been constantly improving them. The routine maintenance that other species had ignored was actually ongoing research and development that kept galactic technology advancing. Now that advancement had stopped. Worse, existing technology was degrading faster than anyone could fix it. The humans had apparently been preventing not just mechanical failures, but technological decay itself. Dr. Yathara's latest analysis included a terrifying prediction. At the current rate of system failures, galactic civilization would collapse to pre-spaceflight levels within 5 years. Individual worlds might survive, but the interconnected society that had flourished for centuries would be gone. We face a choice, she had written. We can either learn to maintain our own systems, or we can accept the return to isolated planetary civilizations. But we cannot continue as we were without humanity. The problem was that learning to replace human expertise would take decades, if it was possible at all. The humans had accumulated centuries of knowledge about maintaining galactic infrastructure. They had trained for generations to develop the skills needed to keep everything running smoothly. Other species had specialists in warfare, science, art, and politics. But only humans had specialized in the unglamorous work of making everything else possible. Krihak walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was building something new. Long-range sensors had detected massive construction projects on the galactic rim, structures that dwarfed anything in known space. The humans were not just surviving their departure from galactic civilization. They were thriving. Meanwhile, the civilization they had left behind was dying slowly, one failed system at a time. A new message arrived by pod from the Galactic Council. They were calling for an emergency session to discuss possible solutions to the crisis. But Krihak knew it was too late for emergency sessions. The time for solutions had been years ago, when the humans were still offering to share their knowledge. Now all they could do was watch their civilization unravel and hope that somewhere among the chaos, someone would learn the lessons that humanity had tried so patiently to teach. Captain Thekmore had been searching for humans for 8 months. His exploration ship, one of the few hegemony vessels still capable of long-range navigation, had visited dozens of former human colonies. What he found in each place left him more confused and frustrated than the last. The human worlds were not destroyed or abandoned. They were perfectly maintained, completely empty, and absolutely clean. On New Geneva, humanity's former trade center, Thekmore's team found a city that looked like its inhabitants had simply stepped out for lunch. The streets were clean, the buildings were in perfect condition, and all the basic systems were running normally. Power flowed, water was clean, and air recycling worked perfectly. But there were no people. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had happened to the millions of humans who had lived there just months before. "Sir, you need to see this," called Lieutenant Vexan from the city's central administrative building. Thekmore found his lieutenant standing in front of a large display screen in what had clearly been a government office. The screen showed a detailed map of the city with all systems marked in green. Everything was functioning normally. "Look at this," Vexan said, pointing to a desk covered with neat stacks of papers. "These appear to be maintenance schedules and system manuals. Everything is labeled and organized." Thekmore picked up one of the manuals. It was titled Basic Infrastructure Maintenance for New Geneva Colony, and was written in simple language that even a child could understand. The manual explained how to maintain the power grid, water systems, waste processing, and air recycling for the entire city. They left us instructions, Thekmore realized. They wanted whoever found this place to be able to keep it running. The team spent 3 days exploring the city. They found similar manuals in every important building. Libraries contained basic technical information, but nothing advanced. Computer systems held only historical records and simple maintenance programs. Anything sophisticated had been carefully removed. It was not destruction. It was surgical extraction of knowledge. The most unsettling discovery came in the industrial district. The factories that had produced advanced technology were intact but empty. Not just empty of people, empty of anything more complex than basic manufacturing equipment. The humans had taken their advanced knowledge with them, leaving behind only what other species already understood. On the 4th day, as Thekmore's team prepared to leave, a message beacon activated. A holographic image of Elena Vasquez appeared in the city's main square, looking calm and professional as always. "To whoever finds this message," she said, "we have left detailed instructions for maintaining all essential systems on this world. The infrastructure here can support any species that wishes to settle here. We recommend that you learn to build and maintain your own advanced technology, rather than depending on others to do it for you. We wish you success in your future endeavors." The message lasted less than 2 minutes and provided no information about where humanity had gone or why they had left. It was polite, helpful, and completely uninformative about human intentions. Thekmore's exploration continued to other human worlds with similar results. Earth itself was the strangest of all. The planet that had been humanity's capital was not only empty, but somehow restored. Cities had been dismantled cleanly, leaving behind parks and forests. The few remaining structures contained nothing more advanced than basic tools and simple shelters. It was as if humanity had decided to erase all evidence of their technological capabilities, while leaving clear signs that they had once been there. But the most disturbing discovery came from long-range sensors operated by the collective's deep space observatories. Dr. Yathara had been tracking energy signatures beyond the galactic rim, trying to understand where humanity had gone. What she found defied explanation. "The construction activity we are detecting is massive," she reported to the emergency council session. "Energy signatures suggest industrial operations on a scale that exceeds anything in known space. They are building something enormous, The council chamber was only half full. Many species could no longer afford to send representatives to Nexus Station, now that interstellar travel had become unreliable and expensive. Those who attended looked tired and frustrated. "What kind of construction?" asked Ambassador Krehak. "We are not certain, but the energy patterns suggest they are moving entire star systems. The engineering involved would require technology far beyond what humanity ever demonstrated while they were part of our civilization." This news created an uncomfortable silence. If humans had possessed such advanced technology, why had they spent centuries doing maintenance work for other species? Why had they pretended to be junior partners when they were apparently capable of stellar engineering? "Perhaps they were studying us," suggested Ambassador Thektal, though he sounded less confident than usual. The Calthek Empire had been one of the hardest hit by the infrastructure collapse, and Thektal had lost much of his earlier arrogance. "Or perhaps they were teaching us," said Krehak quietly, "and we failed to learn." Dr. Yathara continued her report. "We have also detected new communication signals from beyond the galactic rim. The humans are broadcasting, but not to us. They appear to be in contact with other intelligences, entities from outside our galaxy entirely." This revelation was even more shocking. Humanity had achieved first contact with extragalactic civilizations, while the rest of the galaxy struggled to maintain communication between neighboring star systems. "They have found new partners," Dr. Yathara concluded, "beings who apparently appreciate their capabilities more than we did." The council session ended without any useful decisions. What could they decide? They could not force humanity to return. They could not even contact humanity to ask for help. The humans had made it clear that they were done with galactic civilization as it had existed. Captain Thekmore received new orders to investigate the energy signatures that Dr. Yathara had detected. His ship was one of the few still capable of long-range exploration, though the journey to the galactic rim would take months without human-maintained navigation networks. The trip was dangerous and difficult. Without reliable star maps, Thekmore's navigator had to calculate each jump manually, using basic mathematics and hoping for the best. Several times they nearly flew into gravitational anomalies that the old human navigation system would have detected and avoided automatically. When they finally reached the coordinates Dr. Yathara had provided, what they found took their breath away. A vast construction project stretched across multiple star systems. Massive structures connected several stars, apparently harvesting their energy for some enormous purpose. Ships moved between the structures, ships that were clearly human in design but far larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built while part of galactic civilization. And there were other ships too. Designs that no species in the galaxy had ever seen before. Alien vessels from beyond known space, working alongside human construction teams on projects that dwarfed the greatest achievements of galactic civilization. Thekmore tried to establish communication, but received only an automated response. "This space is restricted. Authorized personnel only. Please maintain minimum safe distance of 50 light-years." The message was polite but firm, and the defensive platforms that appeared near his ship made it clear that the restriction would be enforced if necessary. As Thekmore's ship retreated to a safe distance, he realized the truth that galactic civilization was only beginning to understand. Humanity had not been driven away by superior force or political conflict. They had not left because they were weak or defeated. They had left because they had found something better. While the galaxy had been arguing about territory and power, humanity had been quietly developing technology and capabilities that made those arguments irrelevant. They had made contact with intelligences that appreciated knowledge and cooperation, rather than conquest and dominance. The humans had tried to share their advanced understanding with galactic civilization. They had offered to teach other species how to maintain and improve their own systems. They had proposed cooperation and mutual development, but galactic civilization had preferred to treat humans as servants rather than partners. They had been content to let humans handle the boring work while they focused on politics and warfare. Now humanity was building a new civilization with partners who understood the value of knowledge and maintenance and cooperation. And the old galactic civilization was left to collapse slowly, wondering what might have been different if they had listened when humans tried to teach them. 2 years had passed since humanity's departure. and Ambassador Krehak sat alone in his office on Nexus Station. The station was much quieter now. Half the diplomatic sections had been abandoned as various species recalled their representatives. There was no point in maintaining galactic diplomacy when galactic civilization was falling apart. The lights in his office flickered occasionally. The backup power systems were failing and no one knew how to fix them properly. The Sylvany engineers did their best, but they could only perform basic repairs. The elegant efficiency that human technicians had maintained was gone forever. Krehak was reading through old diplomatic records, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. What he found in the archives made him feel sick to his wooden core. The records showed that humanity had not simply been assigned to maintenance work. They had volunteered for it. Over and over again, human representatives had offered to take responsibility for the systems that other species found boring or difficult. And over again, they had offered to teach others how to do the same work. Human Educational Initiative 2387. Proposal to establish interspecies technical training programs, read one document. Status declined by Galactic Council. Reason given, insufficient interest from member species. Human Technology Transfer Program 391. Offer to share advanced maintenance algorithms with all council members. Status declined. Reason, too complex for practical implementation. Human Cooperative Development Project. 95. Proposal for joint research into infrastructure improvement. Status declined. Reason, resources better allocated to current priorities. The pattern continued for decades. Humans offering to share their knowledge, and everyone else politely declining because they had more important things to worry about. Krehak realized with growing horror that galactic civilization had not simply ignored human expertise. They had actively rejected it. They had chosen dependence over education, convenience over understanding. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Krehak expected another status report about failing systems or another request for help that no one could provide. Instead, he found something that made his leaves rustle with shock. It was a message from Dr. Yathara, but she was not calling from her usual location on Collective Prime. The background behind her image showed unfamiliar technology and alien architecture. Ambassador Krehak, she said, I am transmitting this message from beyond the galactic rim. I have accepted an invitation to study with humanity's new partners. Krehak stared at the screen in amazement. Dr. Yathara had been one of the most respected scientists in galactic civilization. If she had joined humanity's exodus, it meant something extraordinary was happening out there. The civilizations that humanity has contacted are unlike anything we imagined. Dr. Yathara continued. They are a confederation of species from multiple galaxies, united by shared principles of knowledge, cooperation, and mutual development. They do not compete for resources or territory. They work together to expand understanding and capability. The message showed brief images of the construction projects Thekmore had observed, but now Krehak could see the true scope of what was being built. It was not just stellar engineering. It was the foundation of something that made galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. Humanity was invited to join this confederation because of their expertise in maintaining complex systems and their commitment to teaching others. Dr. Yathara explained. The qualities that we treated as mundane and boring are exactly what these advanced civilizations value most highly. Krehak felt a deep sadness spreading through his consciousness. Humanity had been offering galactic civilization a chance to join something magnificent, and they had been too proud and too blind to recognize it. I have been permitted to extend an invitation, Dr. Yathara continued. Any species or individuals who wish to learn rather than dominate, who value knowledge over power, and who are willing to contribute to the common good are welcome to request consideration for membership in the Confederation. The message provided coordinates for a location just outside the galaxy where interested parties could request contact. But it also included a warning. The Confederation does not accept members who seek only to benefit from others' work. Applicants must demonstrate genuine commitment to learning, teaching, and mutual cooperation. After the message ended, Krehak sat in silence for a long time. Outside his window, he could see the docking bays where fewer and fewer ships arrived each day. Trade had collapsed, communication was unreliable, and most species were focusing on their own survival rather than galactic cooperation. But there was still a choice to be made. Krihak began writing his own report to the Silvani Council. He explained what he had learned about humanity's role in galactic civilization and their reasons for leaving. He described the confederation they had joined and the invitation they had extended. "We have been given a second chance," he wrote. "We can continue down the path of decline and isolation, or we can learn the lessons that humanity tried to teach us. We can choose cooperation over competition, knowledge over power, and service over dominance." He knew that many on the Silvani Council would reject his recommendations. They were proud beings who had difficulty admitting mistakes. But he also knew that some would listen, just as Dr. Yathara had listened. Over the following weeks, similar messages reached other parts of the galaxy. Not many. Humanity was being selective about who received invitations, but enough to give hope to those who understood what they had lost. Captain Thekmore received coordinates for a meeting point where he could learn more about the Confederation. Some younger collective scientists were invited to attend educational programs. Even a few hegemony officers who had worked closely with human logistics specialists received offers to study new approaches to organization and efficiency. But the invitations came with requirements. Applicants had to demonstrate that they understood why galactic civilization had failed and what would need to change. They had to show genuine commitment to learning from others rather than dominating them. And they had to accept that joining the Confederation meant abandoning the old ways of thinking that had led to the current crisis. Many species refused to even consider the invitations. The Kalthek Empire declared that they would rebuild galactic civilization without humanity's help. The hegemony military leadership insisted that they needed no lessons from anyone. The collective's ruling council decided that their own knowledge was sufficient, but individuals began to make different choices. Dr. Yathara's reports from beyond the galaxy described educational institutions that spanned multiple star systems, research projects that involved dozens of different species, and technological developments that made the old galactic civilization look like a primitive experiment. "The humans are not rulers here," she explained in one transmission. "They are teachers and students just like everyone else. The Confederation is built on the principle that every species has something valuable to contribute and something important to learn." Krihak made his own decision 6 months later. He submitted his resignation to the Silvani Council and requested passage to the coordinates Dr. Yathara had provided. His application was accepted, along with applications from several hundred other individuals from across the galaxy. As his ship departed for the galactic rim, Krihak looked back at the civilization he was leaving behind. Most of it would probably survive in some form. Individual worlds would adapt to isolation, and some species would eventually learn to maintain their own systems. But the dream of galactic unity was over. That dream had depended on cooperation and mutual respect, qualities that most species had possessed in theory but failed to practice when it mattered. The final message from humanity arrived 3 years after their departure. It was broadcast on emergency frequencies throughout the galaxy, ensuring that everyone would receive it. Elena Vasquez appeared on screens across known space, looking as calm and professional as ever. "The universe is vast and full of wonders," she said. "We have found friends among the stars who value the same things we do, learning, growing, and helping each other reach their full potential. Our door remains open to those who share these values. Perhaps someday, when you have learned to value knowledge over power and cooperation over domination, our peoples will meet again as equals. Until then, we wish you wisdom and growth." The message was humanity's final gift to galactic civilization, not threats or promises but hope for a better future if they could learn to build it together.